What's up, Mortgage Coach community? It is 2023. It is the third week of 2023. We are still in the very first month of the year, January. But I rolled out this article called The 6 Megatrends of $100 Million Producers. And one of the megatrends was what I call the data-driven advice era. And I've been getting lots of questions on social media. So comments like, well, what does that mean? Could you define that, Dave? What are the day-to-day habits of a data-driven mortgage advisor? What are the skills and capabilities of a data-driven mortgage advisor? And so I've answered some of that in comments. I've answered that in some of the calls I've done. But I want to give a really thorough answer to that. And I can't think of anyone better to do that with me than Todd Bookspan, the CEO and founder of Win by Noon, one of the greatest coaches in terms of if you want to have a team that can do 500 loans a year. Todd has done it, and Todd has trained and coached a lot of people to do it. So I thought like, oh, and Todd and I for 6 years have been doing the Friday Mastermind at Mortgage Coach. So who better than you, Todd?
Well, I really appreciate that. I'm always humbled when you say those kind things about me. And I feel like this community is the best community in the mortgage business. It's the greatest business in the world to be in. And so I'm always honored anytime you ask me specifically to come on and talk about a topic that you're passionate about, that you believe I'm an expert on, and that the community can thrive if they pay attention. Then I'm always going to show up and be here for you and the community.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. So just as a reminder to some folks, the way I got here is I was writing the article that I write every year for the past 7 years. What are the top 10 interviews that I've done? And when I say the top, what got the most views, got shared the most, got the most engagement? And there was a very clear top 10. And then I looked at, hey, what are the top 20? Because the top 20 all got thousands of views and had lots of engagement. And then I went down and said, okay, out of those, who did over 100 million in volume? And what are they doing? Like, what are these $100 million plus producers doing? And that led to these megatrends. And the biggest one was the data-driven advice era in the mortgage industry. So I do believe this is the beginning of a new era, just like the era driven by technology that we've been in. I also think there's been an era of lower interest rates. So there's just been some eras, and this is a new one. And the biggest reason why this is different than any shift we've seen is for the 37 years I've been in the business, rates have just gone down. And now they went down to the twos. And now we had 2 back-to-back years, $4 trillion market years, so that 63% of every mortgage house in America starts with a 2 or a 3. So we are in a new era where people are going to be able to, where loan officers can't just do loans, they got to deliver advice. It's going to take a decade for loan officers and realtors to help consumers make decisions. Hey, should you sell that home and move up, even though you have a 2.75? Should you rent that home and move up, even though you've got 3.25? And so advice is definitely part of it. And then because I have a front row seat of what can be done with data, we can literally predict who is most likely to move up, who is most likely to be an investor, who is shopping for a mortgage, who qualifies for a cash out refinance. So data-driven advice era. So it's just a whole new capability. So with that said, Todd, first, if you could give your color on, do you think this is just a trend, or do you think this is a new era in the space? And then let's you and I just go back and forth with skills and habits of this future lender.
I always joke that my crystal ball is foggy. So whether it's a trend or a new era, I'm not sure. But I say what we should do is we should just assume it's going to be an era, that this is the new normal. Because if we think it's a trend, then we might not take it serious enough to make the changes required to thrive in this new market. And so I always say, if you prepare for the worst and you're ready for the worst and you can tackle the worst, then if it gets better, great, you're going to win and win faster than everybody else. And so first off, I think if you're watching this, you're watching it for the right reasons. You want to be better for this year. And, it's kind of interesting because I looked at those top 20 those top 20 videos. And, I was super excited that I was made the top 10 for the, I guess we always make it a Scriptapalooza, but one of the interviews that we did. And when you invited me this, you said you want to talk about the habits of it. And so, I want to start sort of there, because I think if you really look at truly the best of the best, I think some people are going to say, yeah, but they have better scripts than I have, or, they're been in business for longer than I have, or they've got some other excuse that they tell themselves of why they're not as good as everybody else. And, I just say, stop, right? You are as good as everyone else if you choose to be. And so when you set this up with me, is you said, hey, I want to talk about the habits of the data-driven person. And I think that that's the challenge, right? The reason I'm talking about wealth building a lot this year is because people don't want to hear about their habits. They don't want to hear about accountability. And so there's a couple of things I always say, and I always try to say it really out of kindness and love, not out of trying to be a jerk. But oftentimes we get into the mortgage business to set our own hours, and that's the exact reason we fail. And so I think really when you look at the first thing that I look at between those who aren't quite making it and those who are at the top, those $100 million producers, it absolutely comes back down to the fact that they work a schedule, they treat it like a career. They work specific hours. They have specific things that they do. And what you would call that is one of two words. You either call it that they've set a standard for themselves, right? And you and I, Dave, have interviewed Andrew Paul and other Navy SEALs talking about setting standards, or they're just so committed to their habits that they really are doing this day in and day out. They don't wake up and say, well, I just don't feel like it today, so I'm just not going to do it. They just know that their career depends on it, that their clients are counting on them, and they just do those repeatable activities over and over again. And I think when it comes to habits, what most of you need to probably hear, I don't necessarily think you need to create new habits as much as you probably need to stop an old habit or two that's keeping you from getting your day started in the right way.
Yeah, so there's definitely a consistency. So I want to call out two interviews I've done recently. Myron Chamberlain, who's the #1 loan officer with Prime Lending.
I love Myron. I've known Myron since he got in this business.
I know. When you saw the interview, you're like, how did you call Myron? Well, he's the #1 producer at Prime Lending. And Kyle Wright, who, when I interviewed Kyle last week, he wasn't sure if he was the #1 or the #2 loan officer with American Pacific Mortgage, but he's right there. And guys, they both had something in common. They use a sales Boomerang to monitor their database, and most importantly, first thing in the morning, they're calling the signals from their database, and so that is at the heart of being, well, first of all, there's a couple things when it comes to being data driven. One of those is you have a database, you're putting contacts in the database, you have accurate information so that you can call, email, text your database, and that you're monitoring it for signals. And when you get those signals, you're calling and texting to connect. Any thoughts around that, Todd?
Well, I think it's critical. So first off, right, it's a daily habit form, right? They do it every day. So if you've ever seen any of my stuff, go to the Win by Noon YouTube channel and you can watch. I teach on the ideal week, like designing your ideal week. And the #1 thing that every loan officer has to do every day is call leads. It should be the first thing that you do. So I love the fact that they're doing that they've made that a commitment. And there's other people out there at those companies who are getting sales Boomerang data and trigger alerts, and they're not doing that every day. And so, the question is that whether you have the data, you're getting sales Boomerang leads or not, don't say, well, they get the leads and I don't. You have people that are giving you buying signals. You've got a database, right? Which Dave called in that article data bank, which I love. And so my question is, are you calling on it every day? Are you calling leads every single day like that they need to be called?
Yeah, there's no doubt it is that consistency. But for all the people that have posted this question, have asked me this question, two things, just write down, one, am I monitoring the database? And two, am I making the calls? And I'm making that my first priority in the day. So Todd, I've got other skills and habits, but before I go, what are, data-driven advisor, what are some other, just if we're making a checklist of skills, habits of a data-driven advisor, what else is on that list?
Well, let me just say a couple of things, right? According to NAR, right, the National Association of Realtors, that if you don't call a lead within 24 hours, like, again, think about this. This is the longest possible time, but people wait. You're 400% less likely to reach the contact. right? So just kind of think about that, right? You are, if you wait more than 5 minutes, if you call within 5 minutes, you're 21 times more likely to reach the contact, right? And so we all know it's speed to lead. And the question is, are you doing it? Right. And so I could quote you statistic after statistic of something that you already know. So again, I just say here, you've got to determine. So when it comes to a habit, right? Like, so I write down what are the habits that I want to have, the habits I call it the habits of a champion, right? Like, what are the habits that are going to make me great? And so you have to think about that. Like, what are you going to commit to? And you want to write it down in writing. It's not one thing just to think it. You literally put it in writing. This is my standard. I call leads every morning before 9 o'clock, right? Before you respond to email, before you jump on Facebook, before you jump on Instagram. I mean, to me, that's really what it comes down to, Dave. If we do those things first, then I think we're going to be great. And then again, figure out where, if you don't have the data, through Sales Boomerang, figure out how you can get it, right? I mean, that's, I guess that'd be my other thing I would throw out there. Am I allowed to say that?
Of course you can. All right. So monitor database, call database, and I'm going to just list off 2 more. If you have others you want to add, I personally think if you do the 3 things, the 3 core things, you could do really well. I mean, there's other smaller things that you can do, but the 3 core things. And by the way, when I talk about monitoring database and calling on those leads, I would put HomeBot right in that same camp. Make sure you're using a platform, making sure that when there are signals that are taking place in that HomeBot platform, you're calling those. So you've got your database and you have your platforms. It's all the same thing. Like, I'm putting consumers in places of value. I'm monitoring signals that say, oh, they might be looking for a loan, and I'm calling them first thing in the morning. So check box. Number 2 is that when you're helping consumers make decisions, and there's 3 primary decisions that are going to take place in 2023. There's going to be first-time home buyers that are going, should I keep renting or should I buy now? There's going to be move-up home buyers, and there's 2 categories. Some of those, they just don't have a choice. They got transferred. They have to move. They're moving for lifestyle reasons. So cause-driven moves. And then they're moving for lifestyle. They're moving for strategy. They're moving to create more wealth with real estate. They're buying a home because it's time to get a second home. By the way, and then of course there are people that just have a lot of equity. Some of those that are cause driven. Hey, we're getting divorced. Hey, we have some reason that we have to tap our equity, and sometimes it's strategic. So in all of those strategic elements, whether it's a strategic move up or it's a strategic cash out refinance or debt consol, you need to deliver data to the consumers. You need to hey, this is what it looks like now. This is what it could look like over 3 years, 5 years, 15 years. You have to be good with data, and you have to be good at future casting what that looks like for the consumer. Of course, that's a MortgageCoach total cost analysis. So the opportunity is using data to educate consumers, and the skill is giving every single family a total cost analysis. Anything to add to that one, Todd?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it there, right? I mean, well, one thing is HomeBot, right? Again, same thing as Sales Boomerang. If you're getting a HomeBot alert and you're not looking at what they send you, then you're making a mistake, right? I mean, don't hesitate. Worst thing is they say, gosh, you know what? No, I was just pushed a button, but you at least still checked in with them and you had a conversation. And so that's where I just find you have call reluctance. If you're not using HomeBot, it's available to all of you. Just go to homebot.ai for artificial intelligence /win by noon. You can waive the $200 startup fee as a loan officer. And you can waive the $50 startup fee for your real estate agents. It's homebot.ai /win by noon. And so what I would say on that, Dave, is, I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, the bottom line is if you're going to be the best for your clients and you're going to help those clients who raise their hand and say, I'm thinking about it, right? You've got to be able to help them understand the decision they're going to make, not just today, but as you said, kind of in the future. And the TCA, no doubt, is kind of the gold standard for doing that. And ultimately what I found in the past is when I take especially a first-time home buyer, that's going to be potentially one of the biggest groups of buyers that we have, this coming year, is, they really want to make a smart choice, right? They really want to feel like they're making an educated decision. And you have the ability to differentiate yourself from everybody else by helping them understand the data, by helping them see the numbers and by giving a different experience than they're going to get when they call, 800 to get a loan, and talk to someone in a call center who doesn't have the experience, the heart, and the tools that you have to really help them win.
Cool. So number 3, guys, number 3 is you need to be smart. You need to be following Keeping Current Matters. Keeping Current Matters blog is an amazing free resource. They have an amazing premium resource. Rate Watch, at MortgageCoach, we monitor mortgage-backed securities. We have data raw, which puts an update in, and there are other services that monitor mortgage-backed securities and insights. The big acquisition by Housing Wire of he was my guest last week.
Oh, Altus Research.
Altus Research, guys, data-driven mortgage advisors. They know the local data and they know the national data, and they have slides. They've got, I use Google Slides. It's free, Google Slides. Maybe they're using PowerPoint. Maybe they're using Keynote. There's other applications, but data-driven mortgage advisors, they know the data that help. Remember, first-time home buyers decide, hey, should I keep renting or should I buy now? Move-up buyers, should I stay here? Should I move up? Investors, is now the time to invest. People that are looking to optimize their equity or consolidate their debts, is now the time. Data-driven mortgage advisors, they have the data and they are able to present that in efficient and effective ways. Anything to add to that one, Todd?
No, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, so you kind of have bucketed this into different opportunities for people. And, really it's just a matter of having a habit to do these things, right? You have to have the habit to take action when the lead comes in, right? You have to build that into your schedule, because what gets scheduled gets done. Some days it might take you 10 minutes because you don't have a whole lot. Other days you might get on the phone with 2 or 3 people, it might take an hour. That's a pretty good day, right? You talked about the fact that you've got to be able to really consult with the buyers, right? And so the TCA, again, that's a habit of making sure that you're excellent, that you can have that conversation, that you're efficient and proficient at, creating a TCA. And that's just a habit of doing it over and over again. I mean, that's just building the muscle by doing it. And then the last one you said was, be a student of the market, right? Know what's going on from a data perspective in the market. And if you're going to do that consistently and be on the cutting edge, you just got to schedule time for it, right? We call it, right, in the, this whole productivity mastermind group started at Darren Hardy. He calls it a jam session, where you schedule time every day to study and learn. And then I would throw in there maybe number 3.5, Dave, which, is kind of part of your number 2, but is annual mortgage reviews. So you're like, well, I don't have any of that technology. I don't know who to call. Then create your own data. That's your data bank, and call them and do an annual mortgage review. Because again, if they're not buying now, right, they may be part of that person who's got the 2.5 rate and is never going to move. Like, that may be what they're telling you today, but you know what? Something may change, right? Life changes, life happens. And you want to make sure that when they hear someone say mortgage, you remind them that if you know anyone who's buying, selling, refinancing, or thinking about investing in real estate, that you would love the referral. And so there's no reason that you can't spend time, whether you want to say, I'm going to call 2 clients a day, or whether you're going to do, my ideal week on Fridays, I did annual mortgage reviews and I spent 3 hours doing mortgage reviews in one day. But again, that's how you're going to turn your database into a data bank. But that's a habit, right? You create that by proactively planning to serve your clients in a way that's a different way. And ultimately, that's how you're going to win, I think, regardless of what the market does, Dave.
All right. So there is a 4th thing, everybody. So number 1, if you want to survive and thrive in this data-driven advice era, you need to have a database. It needs to be well organized. It needs to be monitored. It must be generating alerts. And the mortgage professional that's managing those mortgages must call them, text them, emailing them, whether you're just using your CRM, HomeBot, all of that, you must do that. You must deliver an advice-based experience to the consumer. Total cost analysis is the best way to deliver that. Number 3, you need to be constantly consuming content, and you need to be able to present the data to consumers to help them make informed decisions. And what I'm going to say as number 4, there is an argument that this number 4 should be number 1, because this is probably the single most important thing of all. Like, if you do number 4, you're going to have a level of success. You're not going to optimize your success, because if you're not doing these 3 other things, But number 4 is everything that win by noon is built on, guys. First of all, you must win by noon. You know, like that theory of get your prospecting done by noon, do a TCA by noon. You know, that concept of winning by noon is critical. And then within the win by noon framework, and every successful framework I know in sales, in the mortgage industry, and every other industry, is they track their numbers. You know how many leads you got. You know what your conversion rate is. You're tracking your day-to-day sales habits, high value impact points. Like a data-driven mortgage advisor knows their numbers. They win by noon. They track this stuff, guys. And that number 4, like if you do that and you really do it well, you'll be successful. It's just, if you're doing all 3 of the things in the new era that we're in, you're really going to optimize your success. So Todd, do I need to ask you if you agree with number 4 or not?
I didn't know you were going to number 4. And of course I love it. And I would just say, I mean, in the end, you all know it. Again, I think the challenge is that we all know what we have to do, but we all struggle doing it. And it's just really a mindset of getting the things that drive your revenue done first before you react to everything else that's done to support what you've already created. It's interesting to me because I've spent more time actually teaching productivity and win by noon so far this year to real estate agents, not to loan officers. They've got a thirst for it. So if you can master this concept yourself, I mean, every coaching program, it doesn't matter to me what coaching uniform that you wear, they all believe in tracking numbers. And then a lot also agree that if you record the activity so that you know what you have to do to get there, you know, it makes a big difference. And, you know, I mean, literally Friday, I spent the afternoon with the number 1 real estate team in Arizona. They were number 2. I don't know where they finished last year, but the year before last, they were number 2 in the whole country. And I taught their up and coming team. They have a top tier, and this was the tier of people trying to become the top tier. And it was amazing to hear how interested they were in understanding better into their numbers, but more importantly, really of trying to figure out how do they implement, how do they really ultimately put the blinders on to make sure that they get it all done. And so I think culturally, we all know it's what we need to do. But the question is that are you doing it? And I always try to be careful when I say that, because I don't want someone to say, oh, Todd's a jerk, he's calling me out. But in the end, the word that matters is consistency. And those who are consistent and do it every day, go back to where you started, Dave, with number 1, right? The number 1 loan officer at Prime Lending, and the number 1 or 2, loan officer at Pacific and American, or American Pacific, whatever company you said that was, right? They do this every day. So it's consistency. Consistency wins. It's not, it's the turtle versus the hare. The hare is great, but the hare stopped all the time and you get stuff done. But if you're the tortoise and you just do those things consistently every day, guess what? You're the one who's going to win. And that's, I know I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but, I was the number 23 loan officer in the country the last year I did loans, because I was the tortoise. I did what I had to do every day. And I increased my business 45% in a flat interest rate market by just putting on my blinders, Dave, and doing the consistent things day in and day out. And, of course, in using MortgageCoach, that was, that's always been my kingpin since day 1 in the mortgage business. So I know people are tired of that story, but you and I never are, because it was just a lucky coincidence and it made me great.
Yeah. Well, guys, make note, number 23rd most successful loan officer in America, in an industry that has over 100,000 professionals. So congrats on that, bro. So I did think of one more piece of data, MMI, and there are other data sources where you can know how many loans your real estate agent or not loans, but homes they're selling and listing. You can know who the lenders are that they're working with. Data-driven mortgage advisors. They're targeting their realtors strategically. They know the data. So guys, I'm calling it an era. I do believe I'm right. When the rocket went off and what I call the arms race of the mortgage industry started, I called that. So Kristen Messerly and I wrote a whole article on just this digital shift era. And it has been a digital shift era. And the fact that interest rates have gone down for 37 years, when I got in, they were at 10.2, and the lowest they got down in the 2s. So I do think we're done with that. Like, I don't think they're going to get to 1. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because that'll be awesome. But let's just assume we've seen the highest rates we've ever seen. We've seen the lowest rates we're going to see, and 33% of mortgages in America, this is just a data fact, start with a 2 or a 3. It is going to require a different level of thinking. It's going to require a different skill level from an advice. And I do think it's going to require data. It's going to require advice. Win by noon, manage all your data. So whoever I got our innovation team, we're going to take this article or this interview that Todd and I are doing, and then we're going to create some articles. We're going to create some content. I recommend that we really do have 4 kind of key categories that we've already outlined. And then we have key activities and skills within each one of those 4 chapters. Todd, anything else you can think that's missing? You know, when you think of data-driven mortgage advisor, is there a skill, a technology, a habit that we haven't mentioned so far?
I think there's a belief. I think the belief is that regardless of what the market is, that there's transactions that are going to happen, right? People are going to buy, people are going to sell, people are going to refinance, even in a high rate market. And oftentimes you get in the mindset that it's just not as good as it was before. And I believe that winners are going to keep winning, right? The Champbonosians of the world are still going to do thousands of loans because he believes in himself, he believes in the market, and he's got the data and he's got the habits, and he's leading his team to have those habits every day. And so just don't fool yourself into thinking that just because the market's hard that you can't win. Because I think that's the other piece of it. But I don't, I think the bottom line is we started off with what are the habits if you around the data, and you all have some data and take action with your data, and you all have some habits. Some are good and some aren't great habits. And so just look at what does that look like for you? And then, I think, Dave, as we write this article, let's continue to point out, right, these are the things that people need to do. And then some of you are thinking, well, what do I say, right? Go back to, Jeremy's, I think it was number 3 last year, scripts was all around, his yeah. And that was all around the sales boomerang, data point, trigger alerts, what to say. So those are all the things that you all need to be great at. There's plenty of content in the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel on, how to work with first-time home buyers. And so all the information and the teachings and the examples are out there in this community, and it's free. So take advantage of that. You owe it to yourself to be the best you can be. You owe it to your clients, you owe it to your family, you owe it to your referral partners. So I'm pretty fired up, Dave. I love the fact that you pointed out that your belief is this is the right era, and I know not to bet against you.
Well, who knows? I like what you said too. If you just plan, for that, you won't go wrong. So I'm going to close this out with a couple of things. I interviewed Jack Daly, who is just an incredible mentor of mine for over 2 decades today. And one of the things I'd asked him, what advice do you have loan officers? And he's like, model the masters. And yeah, I mean, that's why I'm still, so passionate about this YouTube channel and interviewing top producers, so that you always have masters, people that are killing it, that you can model. That's why I invest so much time in helping Dale Vermillion promote Meet the Market, where he created this training platform that teaches the skills and habits of calling alerts within Sales Boomerang, delivering total cost analysis. That's why I'm excited about what I'm doing with Todd and the whole Modern Mortgage Summit, is elevating this industry, and anything and everything we can do to do it. Todd, I'm pretty much ready to wrap up this call unless you can think of anything else we need to close out with. Are you wrapped?
I think I'm wrapped. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think all the points were spot on. And you know what you need to do. And so you just need to schedule the time, right? Put it in your calendar that this is when I'm going to do it. Because if you're going to model the masters, I wrote that down, right? If you're going to model the masters, you just have to build your schedule so that you have the time to take action on the data, to take action on the leads, and that you have time set aside to learn and model the masters.
All right, guys, take care. This is a wrap. Make sure you follow the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. Follow us in our Facebook group. Be active. Todd Bookspan, appreciate you, brother.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Take care, everybody.